Hello, hello, welcome everybody. I'm Jev. Yes, Triple V. The accent, by the way, is purely Kiwi. I read old stories for children, so we keep this a family-friendly channel by having bad word blockers, banning bots, and preventing spam. So that means new followers need to wait a few minutes before they can join in the chat. Since these stories are so old, they're now in the public domain, which means they are free to read for anyone and by anyone, the way many Christmas songs are. The digital versions I read are from Project Gutenberg, and you'll find the link for that below. The physical ones are just old books my family has lying around. Sometimes I'll even show them to you. These, by the way, are live reads. Think of them as bedtime stories rather than actual audiobooks. You get the benefits of my mistakes, distractions, explanations, and terrible attempts at accents, along with plenty of chat and interruptions as we find out about things in the story. If you need to do work or chores, then that's fine. Just come and lurk. Please adjust your volume to suit. There are captions available if you have to be quiet or you have hearing challenges, but be warned, sometimes the captions aren't always that accurate. I am a member of the Codex, an awesome group of reading streamers on Twitch. People from many walks of life who share their love of reading, and you'll find links to the Codex reading team and our Discord server below. A special feature of the Codex Discord is the security channel for those of you who stream or moderate. You'll find lots of practical, useful information to help keep your stream and your community safe. So, hang around and come discover adventure with me. You never know what we'll find. I think yes, my microphones were, and my captions are working too, without me even turning that part on. I usually have to open it separately. I don't know why. It's really weird. There's a button that you use for settings for the captions. I don't change anything on it, but often it won't actually auto caption until I've opened that setting, told it to open the preview from another button in it, and then close the settings one, but keep the preview one open. I have no idea why. It doesn't make sense. Hi, Void. Great to have you here. And yeah, if you have to go or stay and snooze or anything else like that, that's fine. I'm quite happy to just be the voice chatting away in the background, even if you're not actually listening to it. That's fine too. I understand. Right, so where are we up to? We are back to reading. We're reading the Rover Boys Out West, which they haven't done yet, have they? The typical Stratemeyer Syndicate books, you get at least halfway, maybe 2/3 the way through before you get to what the subject of the book is that the title's on. House and Horse, totally won't miss those, yeah. Goriki did really well with finding them, because one of the things I found was difficult with these words is if it's not a noun, it's very, very easy to miss it when you're actually reading or listening to the story, because the words that are not nouns are the ones that very easily our brain just sort of takes in the impact of them without actually taking in the word. Whereas nouns, we do. And also, just so people know, when I am using nouns, they are not proper nouns, they are just normal nouns. So proper nouns are place names and people names. So saucepan is a noun. George is a proper noun. Georgia, the place, is also a proper noun. That sort of thing, just in case you weren't so sure, because I know some people aren't familiar with those. Anyway, so there you go. We've got words up, and I also actually have them on my water bottles today. I had enough time to be able to do that. So horse, house, and minor. There you go. And we need some tips. So I'm going to run through the tips if I find the button for those. The proper nouns are the ones that are used, yes, in English. If you're in German, all of the nouns are capitalized, unfortunately. So it's really confusing with German students if they come to New Zealand and they're studying over here for a year at secondary school. They capitalize all their nouns. And so if you're checking their homework for them, you say, why is desk capitalized? And they say, but that's the way you write it. And what they've done is they've literally in their brain translated the word for desk, written it in English, but they've capitalized it, which is the way you write it in German. I don't quite understand that, but there will be a reason why. Just like they also put the subject of a sentence at the end of the sentence. So you have to listen to some great big long convoluted sentence which has lots of Franken words in it. That's where they're compound words, German compound words that have lots of different sections to them to be a specific word for something. And then they will tell you right at the very end of the sentence, what it is that they're talking about, the actual subject of the sentence, unlike English, which it can be at the beginning, the end, in the middle, whatever. And so you don't feel like you're being teased along quite the same way. But yes, nouns are the ones who, proper nouns, the ones that are usually capitalized. That's correct. Right, so tips. Sorry, my brain is still a little bit not quite with it at the moment. I've had this cold, which has been... I probably get a cold once every year or every 2 years, probably every year actually. And other family members also got it. I was only in bed for part of a day. One of the family members was in bed for 2.5, 3 days because, you know, that's the way some people are when they get crook. I couldn't. I just couldn't. So I had to be getting up and doing things, even though they were very minor things. I couldn't cope with much brain work or physical work. Yes, thank you very much. I shall get better soon. So you will hear from time to time that my voice or my nose is not quite its usual sound, or I'll be a little bit gluggy in my thinking, trying to figure out something I'm doing. That's just part of it. It's quite normal when you get a cold or some other sort of illness. For your thinking to slow down because your body is concentrating all its energy on getting better. So let's go with these tips for now. So tip number 1 is drinks. These are tips for anyone who is unfamiliar with what we do here. Tips for making the most of your time here with us. So the first one is drinks. Make sure you have something to drink handy, preferably something you really like, and it needs to be appropriate for who you are and where you are. Some people say, you do you. Well, yeah, actually, except that some people need reminding that it has to be appropriate as well. So I've got a fuzzy coffee today. The fuzzy's all gone. Fuzzy is the family nickname for the ones that are those sachet ones that get a froth on top when you mix them up. So I've got one of those. It has low dairy content just because dairy tends to enhance your body's production of mucus. And when you've got a cold, you don't want too much of that. Anyway, so tip number 1 is drinks. What drinks have you got for today? Tip number 2 is water, which is actually related to tip number 1 because it is a drink. Some people, their tip number 1 drink is water, and that's fine. If that's your favourite drink or that's what you've got to drink today, that's awesome. Otherwise, make sure you have water handy because we have this drinking game going on that we've just been talking about. So the keywords in the story, when I read them out in the story, either house, miner, or horse, miner as in someone who digs in a mine. If any of those words come up in the story, we will let everybody else here know by typing in one of these 2 commands or even putting the water bottle emote in chat with whichever of those words it is, so we all know, because sometimes I will miss them. That's why we let each other know. And we all have a drink of water. So anytime I drink water on stream as well, aside from that, you guys all are committed to drinking water as well, because we all need to have our brains and our bodies well hydrated. It makes them work better. So tip number 3 is food, because food and drink go together, of course. It might be snacks, it might be a meal. You might have just had yours, or you might be looking forward to one. Or it might be too late in the day to actually be doing any food things for you, depending on how you live and where you live. But if that's the case and you want to share with us what you've just eaten or what you're looking forward to eating sometime when you next have something to eat, or what something is that you haven't had for a while that you really want to have, please do share it in chat. We're not scared of food around here. So that's why I say that. And I do have a snack handy today. I have a mini peanut slab. These are very, very yummy. They are Whittaker's chocolate, which is a New Zealand brand, and they have peanuts in, but they have a lot more peanuts than most normal bars that have nuts in have. I think they've got about as many peanuts in there as they can possibly get. And I think they've actually roasted them too. So they're very, very yummy. Whittaker's chocolate I particularly like because it's not silly sweet, which some chocolates are. So I've got that there. I probably won't be eating it, but I don't panic. I do have my snacks handy. So tip number 4 is get yourself comfortable. So getting comfortable can be as simple as making sure you're not too hot or too cold, or finding a fidget toy or plushy companion or something like that to keep you company. It can be lying down somewhere with in a dark room because that's what you want at the moment for being comfortable. But my only proviso on this is if you are working or studying and you need to stay alert, awake, focused and stuff like that, yes, enjoy what's going on here, yes, join in, but don't prioritize that if it's going to get you in trouble. If you are at work, then don't just sit around listening to us and enjoying it unless it's your break time. Don't get yourself in trouble. Only you know what your current situation is. So you've got to keep that in mind with any of these things, by the way. So tip number 5 is have something to write with and something to write on. We often cover lots of different things in the story. Sometimes it will be mention of a place that one person has heard of, and the rest of us, it's like, I don't know what that is or where it is or anything else like that. And you want to find out more about it. Rather than trying to hold on to that word in your mind while the rest of the story is happening and missing half of the fun, write it down, and that way you can do something about it at a time that's more appropriate and still enjoy the story. Sometimes I will often have a something like something I needed to get next time I do grocery shopping or next time I'm doing errands in town. I'll remember it because my brain is busy, and that's when you remember things the most, is when your brain is busy. If you're someone who is in the middle of writing a book and you're still looking for ideas, if you've got lots of time to come up with things, your brain's not going to supply them. But if you're really, really busy doing your accounts and you're getting ready to move house and you're packing things up and all that sort of stuff, that's when you're going to get all the ideas, because that's the way your brain works. It likes the excitement. So when that sort of excitement is going on and something comes to mind, write it down, because then when you do have time to do something about it, you can do so and you won't have lost that thought. Yes, thank you for that, Goreki memo. Write it down. Time is fleeting, definitely. So the last tip number 6 is join in. Whether it's chatting like Void and Goreki are doing, whether it is using the commands, there's a list of them down in the panels down below, or spending your pages, which is the currency for hanging out here, pages to get the camera turned on, or give him a treat, or getting me wearing various headbands or ears, or reading a kid's poem, a public domain kid's poem from one of the books that I've got, or yep, the keyword one works. Very good. That Void is actually demonstrating the use of commands. The commands in the list down below, as well as these two up on the screen, all start with an exclamation mark. They will have an exclamation mark and then a word immediately after it. Some of the ones that are listed down below, like weather, you have to put a place in as well. Not all of the places that you put in will actually come up with a result. And unfortunately, the weather ones do take a while to actually get the result come back, but it does give you results. So if you want to know what the weather is like in London, type exclamation mark weather London, and it will probably give it to you. Sometimes it'll give you a different London to the one that you're expecting. I don't know if it will have the weather for Ekatahuna. You can try that one out. It's the name of a place in New Zealand, by the way. Anyway, so there's lots of ways of joining in. If you have not been here before, you will need to follow to be able to do any chatting, and you will go into a chat quarantine. That's just a way of keeping our space safe from all the spammers and scammers and all that sort of stuff that goes on, unfortunately, in this day and age. Anyway, so there you go. These are the tips. Hopefully next time we will have raccoons or Totally Not Goreki actually giving us some tips. Also, if you really like the idea of the tips video and you want to create one yourself that can be used here, please write down what those different points are, record your own one, or draw your own one if you're into doing drawings for things, and then animate it or something like that, and then send me a link so I can have a copy of it and use it here. Get famous. Get your video on screen. Yeah. And you can be pretending to be me if you want to. Any of that sort of thing. But be creative as long as you keep it family friendly. All that sort of stuff is how it works. Right. I'm just about to read. I'm trying to find something over here. Oh, yes, my Discord says I'm live, so I'm going to just publish that, which means that it's actually going to go out and tell everybody that I'm live. So currently over in our Discord server in the announcements channel, sometimes we get 2 notifications and sometimes we get 1. One of them is listed as Twitch notifications app, and then the other one is Dino app. So the Twitch notifications one is the very, very basic generic one that StreamerBot can do. I'm working on understanding the parameters for recreating what the Dinobot one does, because Dino these days, most of the time it doesn't work. I like the Dino one because it will tell you what the title of my stream is that goes out. Yes, you can make some if you want to. It tells you the title of my stream. It tells you it's an active link that you can click on to be able to come to the stream if somebody's looking at the Discord server and things like that. And I want to have it so that my StreamerBot version does the same thing, so I can get rid of the Dinobot one because it's not reliable and it's not worth having. I actually had a look at the settings in the Dinobot one, and apparently that's because live notifications are meant to be behind a paywall now. So I think they're trying to bait us by occasionally having it work. So, you know, sort of like, this is what you're missing out on. Pay us money so that you can have it. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, we'll get there. There is a way to do it through StreamerBot, which I use for a lot of things. Try Sapphire. Yeah, I know there's a bunch of different bots around for doing that sort of thing, but because I already run StreamerBot, if I can actually set it up within StreamerBot anyway, then it's taking care of that, which would be cool. But I will have a look at Sapphire as well. Thank you. I do appreciate that. Okay, I think that's everything. Oh, yeah, and if you do notice that there's lots of ads, I'm sorry about that, but it's 3 hours of my day, even if I'm only streaming 2 hours a day, and I can't really justify being here if there's nothing comes out of it. So if you can afford to sub, that's great, and if you can't afford to sub, then allow the ads to run. Don't use an ad blocker. So this is a general tip for everybody. If you are using an ad blocker, and you really love certain streamers and you want to support them, but you can't afford to subscribe to their channel, do not use the ad blocker when you are watching their channel on Twitch, because Twitch system knows when you don't see the ad because you've got an ad blocker running. So, yeah, if you want to support a streamer and you can't afford to subscribe to them, let the ads run when you're on their channel. If you are anywhere else on the internet and you want to block ads, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But in terms of supporting streamers that you really want to support, if you can't afford to support them any other way, let the ads run. And then if you miss a little bit of the stream because an ad runs, don't forget you can use, most streamers still have VODs active, and so therefore you can just go back to that little section that you missed out on if you feel that it was actually crucial. I usually find if I'm watching someone's stream and they have an ad run, I think, oh, I'll go and check that VOD afterwards. And then usually I get so involved in the rest of what's happening, it didn't actually matter, that tiny little bit I missed. So there you go. That's your public service announcement for today. So here we go. We are going to read some more of the Rover Boys Out West, and hopefully they do actually start getting out west this time. I don't know. And I've had to plug in my iPad because it was getting a bit flat, probably because I haven't been using it and checking up on it. But it does really well considering, because I know if I leave my modern tablet uncharged for that long, it definitely would have been dead flat. Right, we are up to chapter 14, which is a few spring happenings. Let's just have a quick look at the end of the last page that we had. The boys were out ice skating on the lake, and then the weather got up. That's what happened. I knew there was something exciting happened. And then they managed to get inside an old building, which was kind of giving them some shelter from the wind. And then the building fell down around them. So the end of the last chapter was, "Get out, boys," yelled Tom. "The whole shebang is going to pieces." Tom had scarcely spoken when the shock came, and beams, boards, and shingles flew in all directions. It was a terrifying occurrence, and not knowing what else to do, the 5 boys dug into the loose hay and threw themselves flat. Each felt as if the end of the world had come. So chapter 14 will carry on from here. A few spring happenings. Luckily for the boys, the barn was blown clean over on its side, its roof falling some distance away so that none of the wreckage came down on top of the crowd. But the sounds of the beams and boards breaking were so terrifying that for several minutes after the damage was done, none of the crowd dared to move. Each felt as though the next second might be his last. That would be quite scary. First of all, they've lost sight of the shore, and then finally when they get to the shore, they don't know whereabouts on the shore they are, and they've got this really bad weather going on, and it's just sort of like tearing things apart. Oh my goodness. At length, Dick pulled himself together and peered forth. Anybody hurt?" he panted. "I'm not," came from Tom, "but say, wasn't—" A splutter came from Hans, interrupting him. In his eagerness to escape the fall of the barn, the German cadet had plunged into the hay, open-mouthed, and now some of the stuff had entered his throat and was almost choking him. Yuck, that would be a ugh. "Clap him on the back," cried Dick, and Tom did as requested. Then came several gulps, and Hans began to cough. But the danger from the strangulation was over. Not this sort of strangulation, choking, just something down your throat. All were soon out of the wreckage, and thankful that they had escaped thus easily. "But we won't have the barn to shelter us," said Frank ruefully. "What will we do next?" "Push on until another shelter appears," said Dick. "We can't remain here to be frozen to death." "Yes, but be careful that we don't get on the lake again," cautioned Sam. Yeah, because they had almost fallen through the lake at one stage. "No fear of that, Sam." After the terrific blow which laid low the old barn, the wind appeared to let up a bit, and consequently moving was not so difficult. They struck out across the meadow and presently gained a clump of trees. "Dis was besser as nottings," said Hans. "Supposing we stay here for the night?" You should see the way it's written. Almost literally how I'm reading it. "I'm going to see what's on the other side of the woods first," replied Dick, and stalked off, Tom at his heels. Presently the others heard both Rover boys set up a shout. "A house, fellows! Come on!" They made a rush forward, and soon they reached a stone fence. On the other side was what had been a planted field, and beyond this a house and several outbuildings. A stone fence. Isn't that a stone wall? I don't know. To me it is. With hearts greatly lightened, they climbed over the fence and made for the house. They were still some distance from the dwelling when they heard the bark of a dog. "Hello, I hope he isn't loose," cried Frank. "But he is," said Tom, "and he's coming this way too." "Du mein Zeit!" shrieked Hans. "He will chew us all up. What shall we do?" And he looked ready to collapse. "Perhaps we can snowball him," began Sam. When Dick set up another cry. "It's Lanning's dog, boys. What fools we are. This is Mr. Lanning's place." "Lanning's place?" burst out Tom. "Why, to be sure it is. And that's Leo. Leo, old boy, don't you know us?" he cried. On bounded the dog and then began to bark again, but this time joyously. He came up to Tom and leapt all around him, wagging his brush as he did so. So he's got a fluffy tail. Then he came to Sam and to Dick, for he knew them all very well. "It's a good thing the old barn blew down," said Tom, for he could not help but think of the greeting the Lanning girls would give him. They were soon at the back door of the farmer's cottage. It was opened by Mrs. Lanning, who stared at them in astonishment. "Can we come in?" asked Dick. "We're nearly frozen." Well, I never. Out in all this storm? It's a wonder the captain would allow it. Why, come in, of course, and get thawed out by the fire. And then they went in to meet Mr. Lanning and also the two girls. Their story was soon told, and meanwhile the lady of the house prepared a hot supper for them. As they sat eating, they discussed the question of whether it would be better to return to Putnam Hall that night or wait until morning. I would say stay here, said Mr. Lanning, but Captain Putnam will be worried about you and start out in search of you. That's just it, answered Dick. I think one of us at least ought to return. Great, more opportunity to get lost. Let's draw straws for it, said Frank, and so it was agreed. From the Lanning place each knew the road well, so there was no danger of going astray, except in a storm, a snowstorm, or when it's snowy, things do not look the same. I don't know. Is this foreshadowing that someone's going to get lost again? Each knew the road well, so there was no danger of going astray. Besides, the storm was now letting up in violence. It fell to Frank's choice to go, and as he was about to leave, Hans decided to keep him company. The pair were soon off, and this left the Rover boys and the Lannings to themselves. Satisfied that all was now right, the three brothers made the most of the evening thus afforded them, and so did the two girls. And all played, sang, and went in for various games until 11 o'clock. Then the lads retired to a room assigned to them. I say, said Tom as he prepared to turn in, that adventure started odd-like, but we came out of it all right. Yes, it couldn't be better, agreed Sam, because these two boys like the two girls. At this, Dick winked, especially as we landed at the Lannings' home, he observed. Tom, I think, likes the other girl from the other family. Is that this book? These characters? I think so. Especially as we landed at the Lannings' home, he observed. What a pity it isn't Dora's home too, drawled Tom. That's who Tom likes, is Dora. I knew there was someone else. And then as Dick shied a shoe at him, that means he tossed it at him, he turned over and dropped off into the land of dreams. Early the next morning they started for Putnam Hall, John Lanning driving them thither in his sleigh. It was a ride they enjoyed. The farmer dropped them at the door, and Captain Putnam stood ready to receive them. "I'm glad you're safe back," he said with some display of emotion. "Harrington and Mueller have given me the particulars of your night's adventure." So Frank is Harrington and Mueller is Hans. "Hereafter I want all of the cadets to remain off the lake during a snowstorm." "You may be sure we will remain off, Captain," answered Dick. "One such adventure is enough for any fellow." But there was no snowstorm when they went out. It came up once they were out there, remember? After this happening, nothing of special interest occurred until Christmas. Then the cadets gave their usual entertainment, including a little domestic drama called Looking for a Quiet Boarding House. In this drama, Tom and Larry acted the parts of two old maids who were taking boarders, two old unmarried women, while Dick, Sam, and 8 others were the so-called boarders, or those looking for board. The play was filled with humorous situations, and the audience, in which were the Stanhopes and the Lannings, enjoyed it hugely. "If you fail in everything else, you'd better go on stage, Tom," said Nellie to that youth. "You make a splendid actor, or I should say actress," and she laughed. "How would you like to have me for a sister?" minced Tom in a voice he had used in acting. "Thank you, but I don't want an old maid for a sister." "Then perhaps you don't want to be an old maid yourself," he retorted. "All right, I'll see to it that you're spared that annoyance." And then she boxed him playfully on the ears. She could not help but think a good deal of this open-hearted, fun-loving fellow. After the entertainment, the boys went home to remain over New Year's Day. Jack Ness, the hired man, met them at the railroad. "I thought Jack Ness was the guy who was meant to be at, not the Lannings, but at Dora's house, to make sure that the bad guy, the old teacher, didn't turn up again." Met them at the railroad station in Oak Run and drove them through Dexter's Corners to Valley Brook Farm. "It's good for sore eyes to see you back," said the hired man. "The folks is waiting for you like a set of children." When they came in sight of the farmhouse, there was Mr. Rover, Uncle Randolph, and Aunt Martha. Mr. Rover being, I think, father who's been missing in Africa up until last book that we didn't read. And Aunt Martha all on the porch to receive them. Anderson Rover could not help rushing forward to embrace his sons, and the greetings of uncle and aunt were scarcely less affectionate. "My own boys," was all that Anderson Rover said, but the manner of speaking meant a good deal. "The house is yours, boys," said their Aunt Martha. "I used to think you were a bother, but now I'd rather have that bother than miss you," and she smiled so sweetly that Dick gave her an extra hug. "Yes, yes, do what you please, lads," put in Randolph Rover. "I shall not be annoyed. We understand each other a great deal better than we did before we went to Africa, eh?" So Uncle Randolph is the one who has been doing the experimental farming, and he's the one who went to Africa with the boys to try and find their father. And if you wish to read that book, you're most welcome to, but it's not one that I'm going to be reading because it's a lot more racist than the rest of them. "Right you are, Uncle," cried Tom. "We found you out to be a regular brick." So he can't have been quite as stuffy as they were used to him being when he was out in Africa. Well, his brother is the adventurer. Christmas presents were numerous, including some jewellery for all of the boys and a ring to replace the one that Tom had lost, and some games and half a dozen storybooks, not to mention other things more useful, as, for instance, some socks Mrs. Randolph Rover had herself made. For the aunt, there was a new breast pin from the three boys. That means a little, like a hat pin, but one for on the front of your blouse or shirt, like a tie pin. But it's more ornamental because it's for a lady's blouse. And you wear it somewhere up around here, depending on what you're wearing as to how you wear it. There was a new breast pin from the three boys, and for the uncle, a set of scientific works just to his liking. For their father, the lads had purchased a gold-headed cane, the stick of which was made of some wood that they had brought with them from the banks of the Congo. The time at home passed all too quickly, and soon it was necessary for the boys to return to Putnam Hall. Dora Stanhope and the Lanning girls had not been forgotten. Of course they hadn't. And now these young folks sent gifts of dainty embroidered handkerchiefs, of which the boys were very proud. Tom and Sam had sent Nellie and Grace 2 elegant Christmas cards. What Dick had sent Dora he would not tell. Being behind the scenes, we may state that it was a tiny gold locket, heart-shaped, and that Dora treasured the gift highly. The second week after New Year found them at the hall once more, pegging away at their studies harder than ever, for they were bound to make the record that their father desired of them. But the time spent at school was not without its sport and fun, for there was plenty of sleighing and skating, and the gymnasium was always open during the off hours. That means not during class time. "No enemies at the hall this season," remarked Fred Garrison. "No Baxters or Cavens or fellows of that sort." "No, and I'm glad of it," answered Dick. "It's a big relief." "Have you any idea what became of Baxter?" "Not the slightest." "And of Mumps, the fellow who used to be his toady?" "Oh, Mumps reformed after that chase on the ocean, and I've heard that he went west, struck some sort of a job as a bookkeeper or something like that." "Well, old Crabtree is safe. He won't bother us any more," concluded Fred. And there the subject dropped. Oh, is that what happened? I couldn't remember. In prison, maybe? The weeks glided by quickly until spring was at hand, and the green grass began to cover the bills and fields. I think it's the hills and fields. Yeah, another one that's missing a little bit on some of the edits. I'm going to highlight that word. And the green grass began to cover the hills and fields surrounding Cayuga Lake. Still the Rover boys pegged away, and it must be admitted that even Captain Putnam was astonished at their progress. "They are whole-souled fellows," he said to George Strong. "They put their whole mind into everything they go into." "And those are the boys who afterward make their mark in the world," answered the head assistant. "The Rover boys are all right." There you go. Chapter 15. How Arnold Baxter escaped. Arnold, I think, was the dad who got sent to prison. Well, I never. It was Dick Rover who uttered the remark as he leapt from the chair in which he'd been sitting, newspaper in hand. Never what, Dick? Drawled Tom lazily, looking up from a kite he was mending. Never saw anything to equal those Baxters. What do you think? Arnold Baxter has escaped from prison. What? Said Tom, and on the instant the kite was forgotten, and Tom smashed it directly through the middle with his foot as he came to his brother's side. He was so focused on the Baxters. Yes, he's escaped, and in the slickest manner I've ever heard of. I tell you, Tom, he's a prize criminal, if ever there was one. But how did he get out? How? Why, just shook hands with his jailers, thanked them for their kindness, and then left. Uff! Dick, is this a joke? Because if it is, I want to remind you that we had the 1st of April last week. You know, April Fools. It's no joke, although Baxter ought to have played his trick on the first true enough. Well, what is the trick? You said he shook hands with his jailers and walked off. Of course, he couldn't do that unless his time was up. But it wasn't up, not by several years. Then how did he do it? By a trick, Tom, the neatest, cleverest, slickest ever performed in this state. Oh, stow your long-winded speeches, Dick, cried the younger brother, half angrily. Boil it down and serve the extract in short order. In other words, just, get to the point. Very well, I will. Firstly, Arnold Baxter is in jail. Secondly, he states his friends are going to ask the governor for a pardon. Thirdly, a friend in disguise comes to the jail with the supposed pardon. Fourthly, great joy of Baxter. Fifthly, he thanks his jailers and bids them goodbye, as I said before. Sixthly, after he and his friend are gone, the jailers inspect the so-called pardon. Seventhly, the jailers telephone to the governor. Eighthly, the pardon is pronounced a forgery, signatures, seal and all. Ninthly, all the powers that be are as mad as hornets, but they can do nothing, for Baxter the elder has gone and has left no trace behind him. Phew, said Tom, with a low whistle. Say, but that runs like the half-dime novels I used to stuff myself with in my green days, doesn't it? That means when he was younger. That's right, Tom, excepting that this is strictly true, while the half-dime novels used to be as far from the truth as a howling dog is from the moon. But seriously, I don't like this, went on the elder Rover earnestly. Neither do I like it. Baxter at liberty may mean trouble for father and for us. I begin to see now what Dan Baxter meant, said Tom suddenly. I'll wager he knew all along what his father and the friend were up to. I wonder who the stranger was. He must have been a very skilful forger to forge the governor's signature and the other signatures too. Since when do you accept the visit from someone who you don't know if you are an official of a prison and accept their word and not actually check it? That is really weird. That's seriously weird. It doesn't make sense to me. I suppose back in the very old days when the people were less suspicious of other people, it might have happened. I don't know. It really doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. Let's carry on with the story, find out what happens. I wonder who the stranger was. He must have been a very skillful forger to forge the governor's signature and the other signatures too. He must be some old pal to Baxter. Don't you remember father said Baxter was thick with several fellows in the West before he came out here? Let's write to father about this at once. This was agreed to, and Dick began to pen the letter without delay. While he was at work, Sam came in and was acquainted with the news. It's just like the Baxters, said the youngest Rover. After this, I'll be prepared to expect anything of them. I'd like to know where he has gone. Perhaps out west. Out west? Cried Dick and Tom simultaneously. Certainly didn't he swear to get the best of us regarding that mine matter? By gum, murmured Tom. Dick, we can't send that letter any too quick. Perhaps we'd better telegraph. Oh, father may have the news already. Dick glanced at the newspaper again. Hello, I missed this, he cried. Missed what? came from both of the others. The paper says Baxter's escape occurred several days ago. The prison officials kept it to themselves at first, hoping the detectives would recapture the criminal. And that paper was printed yesterday morning. At any rate, Baxter has had his liberty for at least 5 days. I must say I don't like this at all. Would telegraph to father without delay. They didn't have phones back then. Not for that sort of thing. Looking out of the window, Dick saw Captain Putnam walking on the parade ground. He ran down to interview the master of the hall. "Why, yes, you can go to Cedarville at once, if you deem it important," said the captain. "Peleg Snuggers can drive you down." "Thank you, Captain," said Dick, and ran to the stables. He found the utility man at work cleaning out a stall, and soon had Snuggers hitching up. Inside of 10 minutes, Dick was on the way to town. As he bowled along, little did he dream of how long it would be before he should see that dear old Putnam Hall again. Not at all subtle with the foreshadowing there, are we? Sorry, I've just got a little bit of skin on my hand that was just... I was noticing it. It's not usually like that. I don't know why. It just was. While passing the Stanhope cottage, Dick saw Dora at work over a flower bed in the front garden. "Just going to Cedarville on a little errand," he shouted, and waved his hand to her, and she waved in return. In the back garden was Alec, and the man flourished a hoe as a salute. That's who it was. It was Alex who was there, not the other guy. So he's still there. The telegraph office at Cedarville was not a large place, but let's try that again. The telegraph office at Cedarville was not a large place, and but few private messages were received there. As Dick drove up, the operator looked at him and at Snuggers. "Hello, I was just going to send a message up to your place," he said to the utility man. "All right, I'll take it," said Snuggers. "You can pay me for the messenger service," he added with a grin. "Whom is the message for, may I ask?" questioned Dick quietly. "For Richard Rover." "That's myself." "Let me have it at once." "You are Richard Rover?" queried the operator, and looked at Snuggers, who nodded. "You came here just in time, then." The telegraph operator brought the message forth, and Dick tore it open with a hand trembling in spite of his efforts to control it. He felt instinctively that something was wrong. Because this is a Rover Boys book, of course it's wrong. The telegram was from Mrs. Randolph Rover and ran as follows. "Come home at once. Your father and uncle attacked by unknown rascal who tried to ransack house. Uncle seriously hurt. Martha Rover." Oh, that's who it's signed by. Dick's heart seemed to stop beating as he read the lines. "Attacked by rascal who tried to ransack the house," he murmured. "It must have been Arnold Baxter." "No bad news, I trust, Master Dick," observed Snuggers. "Yes, Peleg, very bad. Take this back to the hall and give it to my brothers and tell them that I am going to Ithaca by the first boat and there take the midnight train for home. Tell them to explain to Captain Putnam and then to follow me. Do you understand?" I guess I do," stammered the working man. "Be you going home, then?" "At once." Dick turned to the operator. "The boat for Ithaca is almost due, isn't it?" "Yes, sir, in 5 minutes." "Take me to the wharf, Peleg, and hurry up about it." "Got to go, then?" "I have." And Dick leapt into the carriage. Peleg Snuggers saw that the young cadet was in earnest and made the boat landing in less than 3 minutes. The Sylvan Dell, a companion boat to the Morning Star, was on time, and Dick soon found himself on board and bound for Ithaca. He was too excited to keep quiet and began to pace the boat from stem to stern. "What's up, my lad?" asked the captain as he looked at the youth curiously. "I'm in a hurry to get home, sir." "Well, I'm afraid tramping around won't hurry matters any," and Captain Miller smiled broadly. "Do you object to my walking around?" asked Dick, somewhat sharply. "Oh, no, go ahead. I hope you haven't heard any bad news," went on the captain kindly. "But I have had bad news. My father and my uncle were attacked by some man who tried to ransack the house. My uncle was seriously hurt." "That's bad. I trust they collared the villain." "No, I guess he got away, for the telegram I received said he was unknown." "It's too bad. Do your folks live in the city?" "No, in a country place called Valley Brook." "Then I doubt if they can catch the rascal who did the deed. The country officers too The country offers too good a chance to escape. Yeah, it's a bit easy to hide. I mean to catch him if I can, said Dick earnestly, and then the captain left him once more to himself. He thought that the boy had rather a large opinion of himself, but did not know that Dick already had a first-class clue to work on. Chapter 16. And I'm going to have a drink of water. Yes, I am. Chapter 16, Something About the Eclipse Mine. That's what the title is. Dick, oh, how glad I am that you have come. Mrs. Randolph Rover rushed out to the porch to greet the boy as he came bounding up the steps 2 at a time. I came as soon as I received the telegram, he answered as he embraced his aunt. And how are Father and Uncle Randolph? Your father is not seriously hurt. Only a twist to his left ankle where the burglar kicked him. But your Uncle Randolph... Mrs. Rover stopped and shook her head bitterly. Not dangerously hurt, I hope, cried Dick, his heart leaping into his mouth, for as we already know, his eccentric old uncle was very dear to him. Yes, he is seriously hurt, Dick. He was struck in the head and a fever has set in. Can I see him? Not yet. The doctor says he must be kept very quiet. But he will recover, Aunt? I hope so, Dick. Oh, it is dreadful. And the tears rolled down the woman's pale face. I'm so sorry for you, he exclaimed, brushing the tears away with his handkerchief. So sorry. Where's Father? Up in the bedroom in the wing of the house. I can see him, can't I? Oh, yes. Dick waited to hear no more, but ran up the stairs quickly, yet making no noise for fear of disturbing his uncle, who was in a front room on the same floor. Father, can I come in? He asked in a low voice. Yes, Dick, was the reply, and he went into the room to find his father in a rocking chair, with his left foot resting on a stool. Mr. Anderson Rover's face showed plainly that he had suffered considerable pain. Father, I'm so glad it's not worse, he said as he took his parent's hand. Aunt Martha tells me Uncle Randolph is seriously hurt. Yes, he got the worst of it, returned Anderson Rover. The blow was meant for me, but your uncle leapt in and caught its full force. And you know who the robber was? No, he had his face well covered. I think I can tell you. You, Dick? Oh, you're thinking of that Dan Baxter. It was a man, not a boy. I'm sure of that much. Yes, it was a man, Father. It was Arnold Baxter. Arnold Baxter? You must be dreaming. He's in jail. No, he has escaped. He escaped about a week ago. Escaped? Anderson Rover raised himself up and would have leapt to his feet had not his sprained ankle prevented him. You are certain of this? Yes, and Dick related the particulars. You must be right. The man did look like Baxter, but I thought it impossible that it could be the same. The elder Rover gave a groan. Then the fat is in the fire for a certainty, and after all my work and trouble. What are you talking about now, Father? That mining claim in Colorado, the Eclipse Mine, as Roderick Kennedy christened it. But I don't understand. It's a long story, Dick. You've heard parts of it, but not the whole, and to go into details would do you small good. But I would like to know something, Father. You shall know something, Dick. Mr. Rover drew up his injured foot. Oh, if only I could go after Arnold Baxter without delay. It's too bad you're hurt. Does it pain you very much? When I try to stand on it, the pain is terrible. The doctor says I must not use the foot for a month or 6 weeks. That will make tedious waiting for you. Yes, and in the meantime Baxter will try to cheat me out of that mining property if he can. But he won't dare to show himself. He will do the work through some other party, probably the man who helped him to escape from prison. Did he get anything of value? Papers, for instance? Yes, he got most of the papers, although I still retain one small map, a duplicate of one which was stolen. You see, Dick, years ago Roderick Kennedy and myself were partners out in Colorado, owning 6 claims. Yes, I've heard that before. Well, one day Kennedy went off prospecting and located a very rich find, which he christened the Eclipse Mine. The claim was never worked, but he made a map of the locality which he kept a secret. As his partner, I was entitled to half of all his discoveries, just as he was entitled to half of my discoveries. At that time, Arnold Baxter worked for both of us. He was thick with Kennedy, and I soon saw that he was trying to break up the partnership so that he could form a new deal with Kennedy. But Kennedy was true to me, and in the end we caught Baxter stealing from us and gave him 24 hours' notice to quit camp. Baxter was enraged at this and went off vowing to get square. About a month after that happened, Kennedy tumbled off a cliff and died of his injuries. He was probably pushed, by the way. In his will, he left me all his mining properties, including the Eclipse claim, which I have never yet seen. After Kennedy was buried, Arnold Baxter came forward and claimed part of the property and produced papers to substantiate his claims, but the papers were proved by a dozen miners to be of no value. Miner. We finally have it. Not mine, not mining, but miner. We have the word, one of them. And we're just on halfway through the book before we finally start talking about this. And the papers were proved by a dozen miners to be of no value, and in the end he was again drummed out of camp. I was making money fast just then, and for the time being paid no attention to Baxter, but he continued to annoy me, and I'm pretty certain that on 1 or 2 occasions he tried to take my life. It sounds like it. Sounds like the sort of guy he is. But at last he disappeared, and I heard no more of him until you boys brought me back from Africa and told me that you had had trouble with both him and his good-for-nothing son. He seems bound to shadow me wherever I go. But the Eclipse Mine? Broke in Dick. I'm getting to that. Kennedy had left his interest in it to me, but Baxter claimed the whole discovery as his own, saying he was out on his own hook when the mine was located, which was a falsehood. But though Baxter claimed the mine, he could not locate it, nor could I do so. It was along a creek which a certain Jack Wumble had called Bumblebee, but we could not locate this creek, and Jack Wumble had departed for fresh fields. I think that means he's actually travelled elsewhere, not a euphemism that he's died. But I have located the old miner, and he has told... Miner! I have located the old miner. And he has told me that Bumblebee Creek was in reality one of the south branches of the Gunnison River and is now called the Larkspur. You must remember that in those early days matters were very unsettled in Colorado, and names changed almost weekly. So this Eclipse Mine is on Larkspur Creek. Yes, at a point 300 yards above a white cliff which the old miners used to call Rooney's Ghost, because a miner named Rooney once committed suicide there. The old miners and a miner named Rooney. And what about Baxter, Father? If he had those papers, do you think if he has those papers, do you think he or his confederate will go up the Larkspur to locate the Eclipse Mine? Undoubtedly, under another name, that is, if it proves as valuable as my old partner anticipated. But if we can get there before him and locate it for ourselves, if I could do that, Dick, then I would not fear Baxter or anyone else. But if he gets in ahead of me, well, you know, possession is 9 points of the law, and he can at least make me a lot of trouble. Dick sprang from the seat into which he had dropped. He shan't do it, Father, he exclaimed. But how are you going to help it, my son? I cannot go west with a sprained ankle. You're not going to walk there, mate. I'll go west myself and locate that claim in spite of what Arnold Baxter has done. You go west? Yes, without me, that would be, well, remember, Father, I went to Africa to find you. I shall never forget it, Dick, but you had others with you, your Uncle Randolph and Tom and Sam and Alec. Well, I can take Tom and Sam with me again if it comes to that. It is a wild country out there among the mining camps of the mountains. It is no wilder than in the heart of Africa. Mr. Anderson Rover shook his head doubtfully, and then if Baxter found out what you were trying to do, he would... He could not finish, but Dick understood. I shall be on my guard, father. I know what a scoundrel he is, and will give him no chance to get at me. At that point, the conversation was interrupted by the hired girl who came to call Dick to a late supper. The lad was hungry, so he did not refuse. By the time he'd finished, Mr. Rover had gone to bed, so his son also retired without probing the Eclipse Mine affair any further. But it was a long time before Dick got to sleep. So full was his head of the suddenly proposed trip to the west. And the next chapter is chapter 17, Bound for the West. Right, how are we doing? We're about halfway through. Oh, it's getting exciting, isn't it? I mean, the end of the previous reading that I did was a bit exciting with that snowstorm on the lake. Sorry, that's just because I needed a drink and got coffee. I'm going to have some of that too. So where are we up to? Ah, hi! Yes, horse. Do we have horse? No, K word, and then you can write horse to say that that was the word that you used, that you heard. I don't remember, there probably was a word saying horse, but I didn't hear it. No worries. I'm going to drink some water anyway, except that it's not that one I'm going to drink from. I'm going to drink from this one, in honour of Aranel being absolutely certain that we need to drink for horse. So if you use either key or K word, it will highlight this whole area so that we all take notice of it. And then you tell us which of these words it's for that you heard in the story. That's how it works. I haven't done one that's specifically for each of the words, just because I would have to change the commands every time that we had a new book, whereas what it is now is the commands, these two here stay the same, and then just in this part here in front of me, I can just change what these three words are, and that's relatively easy to do. And it's less likely for me to forget to change that part than it is for me to change an actual command, which is in a whole different department, i.e. on another website. So that's how that works in my head. I love horses. I was hoping for a horse command. Yeah, I'm sure you were. We may have some horses coming up soon, in which case we're going to be drinking from the horse water bottle. Sorry, I don't actually have any commands specific to horses. I love donkeys, just because they're the ones that I'm used to having around. Oh, and also you can use the bingo if you want. There's a command which is bingo, and it will give you a link for a bingo card that has been personalised for you, randomised for you, sorry, I should say. And any of those things, including the central space, are things you can look for happening here. No worries. Good. Here we go. We're going to read chapter 17, Bound for the West. On the following... Oh, by the way, if anyone does the bingo, the card you get has been completely randomised from quite an extensive list of different things. So it will not be the same as the card that anyone else gets. Okay? So, and let me know in chat if you get a bingo, which is a full line, either horizontally or vertically. And that central space is not a free space. You have to actually hear or see what that word is on stream. Right, here we go. Chapter 17, Bound for the West. On the following morning, Tom and Sam arrived, as anxious as Dick had been to learn the particulars of what had occurred. They listened to their father's story with interest as he told how he had heard a noise and gone below to grapple with the midnight intruder who was ransacking the library desk, and of how Randolph Rover had come to his assistance and had been seriously wounded, and how all were now certain that the unwelcome visitor had been Arnold Baxter. The baddie. That is, all but Randolph Baxter, who lay semi-unconscious in a high fever and who knew nothing. The doctor came in at noon and pronounced Randolph Rover but little better. He must be kept very quiet, said the medical man. Do not allow anybody to disturb him. If he should become in the least excited, I would not answer for his life. So the boys kept away from his bedchamber and walked about on tiptoes and spoke in whispers. Yeah. Brain injury from being kicked in the head, by the sound of it. Aranel has redeemed area. What's all this about? Time for the selector of choosing, which is going to turn up here in a minute. There it is. Yay! Oh, I've got to resize that image. I forgot that. And what are we going to get? The selector of choosing has chosen unicorns, and now we're going to watch chat and see which unicorn headband it's going to give us. Because that doesn't happen here. It happens in chat. Unicorn 6 is the unicorn of the moment. Now I'm going to have to go to my Discord server, and in the General Picks Book Illustrations channel, I think it is. Yes, and in the pinned messages are the unicorn headbands in that channel. Okay, and I know exactly which one it is because it's showing me a picture in that. And if I had more brain room in my computer, I would actually show it on screen for you, but I don't. Sorry. But I know where the unicorn headbands are, and I'm just digging under here to find the right one. Pretty sure it's that one. Yes. Here we go. And this is unicorn headband number 6. Go and have a look at those ones that are in that channel. That's the one called General Picks Book Illustration Stuff, including your own. That's the channel name. Bit of a mouthful. And go to the pinned posts and then jump to where they are. And have a look at them and give suggestions for names. So that we can name them instead of having Unicorn 6 and things like that. Right. First of all, I need to put the egg timer up on screen, which is... Where's egg timer? Egg timer. It's that one. I think I need to change the colour of it so I can see it more easily. And we're going to go start, and that is going to run for 6 minutes, which is how long I'm going to wear this for. I'll just take this cushion off my seat so you can see the unicorn horn a little bit better. There you go. So let's carry on. So yeah, brain injury, and he needs chance for his brain to just reduce the swelling so he can come right. Let's carry on. So the boys kept away from his bedchamber and walked about on tiptoes and spoke in whispers. It was Dick who called together a council of war out in the barn late in the afternoon after he had had another long talk with his father. Here's the whole thing in a nutshell, he said. Arnold Baxter has those papers, or the best part of them, and he means to stake that claim if he can. But he won't dare to show himself, said Sam. If he does, we can turn him over to the police. Of course he won't show himself, but he'll get somebody else to stake the claim and whack up. Whatever that means, replied Dick. We won't let him do it, interposed Tom bluntly. I'll go to Colorado myself and stop him. Good for you, Tom. You've struck the nail's head first clip, said his elder brother. Father was going out there this spring anyway, and he was going to take us. I remember that. That was one of the things that was mentioned at the beginning of the story. True, Father would go today if he could, but he can't on account of that hurt ankle, went on Dick. Then let us go for him, came from Sam. We can do nothing here but worry Uncle Randolph, and I don't feel like going back to Putnam Hall while this excitement is on. No, especially if the school is expecting them to be away at the moment. I told Father that I wanted to go, but he is afraid the trip would be too dangerous. The word actually is not but written here, it's lout. And I think that's an optical character recognition fail because most OCR programs are not designed to read old print. They're only designed to recognise modern print. And that's the sort of thing that is meant to have been corrected. And I need to find out how to let the Project Gutenberg people know when there are errors like that in a book. Huff, we went to Africa, was Tom's comment. He was awfully proud of that trip to the dark continent, Tom was. It wasn't the trip so much as the fact that we may fall in with Arnold Baxter and his Confederates. By the way, I wonder if Dan has joined his father, mused Sam. Likely as not. Certainly Dan knew what his parent was up to. Otherwise, he wouldn't have written that letter Josiah Crabtree dropped. I have no idea what that one was. It was too long ago. Sorry. Then you can be sure the two Baxters have gone to Colorado, he said Tom. And the 3 Rovers will go too, said Sam. Will you? Asked Dick. I wanted to say so, but... Yes, we'll go, and that settles it, cried Tom. And the sooner we get off, the better, but we must get Father to explain everything a little more closely before we leave. Yes, because they need to have some details like how to recognise stuff. It was easy to get Anderson Rover to explain, but not so easy to get him to consent to their going out to Colorado. At last he said that if they could get Jack Wumble to go with them, they might go. Jack Wumble's all right, and if he says that he'll stick to you, I know he will keep his word. He is a crack shot, and besides he knows Larkspur Creek from end to end, and it will save you a lot of hunting around to have him by to give information. And where can we find Jack Wumble? The last I heard of him, he was in Chicago. He is rather a reckless man, and when he has money, is apt to spend it in gambling. But his heart is true blue and honest to the core. Apparently Chicago's the place to go if you want to gamble. I don't know. Doesn't mean anything to me. Do you know where he was stopping? At a hotel called the Western Palace. It's a great resort for mining men, and you'll be sure to find out all about him if you ask for him there, concluded Mr. Rover. A great deal more had to be talked about and considered, but we shall pass that over. It was decided that the boys should leave for Chicago early the following Monday morning. The spare time was used up in getting ready for the trip. The boys had their trunks shipped home from Putnam Hall and wrote to the master and their friends telling of what was going on, but entered into no particulars. By Saturday night they were all ready, and on Sunday went to the church at their aunt's request. I hate to see you go, said Mrs. Rover with a sad smile. It is a big risk. Be sure and come back safe and sound. We will, answered Tom, and you can be sure and have Uncle Randolph up and well when we do come back, he added. Poor Tom, little did he think of the grave perils that waited for him in the far west. I'm going to call foreshadowing on that one on the author's part. Obviously felt like there was more need to hype up the possibility of danger. The day was a perfect one when they left, the air full of bright sunshine and the music of the birds which had made Valley Brook their summer home for many years. Mrs. Rover saw them to the carriage. Yes, go west, young man, indeed. Mrs. Rover saw them to the carriage while Anderson Rover waved them a serious adieu from his bedroom window. Oop, and we're just going to turn that off. There you go. Egg timer is done, so unicorn headband is coming off. There you go. And I shall put my cushion on my seat because it's a little bit more comfortable. Arinel has redeemed another one. I love these gifts, by the way. Time for the decider of randomness, and the decider of randomness has chosen for us Rabbit Black. Yes, and it says rabbit because I had been doing Disney Dreamlight Valley stuff. It's meant to be donkey black. They're rabbit ears, but I got them at Easter time because it's really hard to actually get ears, dress up ears that look like donkeys. And then I realised at Easter time that that the rabbit ones would actually work quite well. Let's turn the egg timer back on. I shall move the cushion again. There you go. And you can kind of see it. And I'm just going to move the book to where I can see it a bit better, rather than trying to look over the top of my glasses, or under the top. I've got progressive lenses, and the distance that my book is from where I sit is not ideal for the angle that I'm looking at it. So this should help. I'll bring my microphone a little closer if I can. That's better. Poor Tom, little did he think of the grave perils that waited for him in the far west. The day was a perfect one when they left, the air full of bright sunshine, and the music of the birds which had made Valley Brook their summer home for many years. Mrs. Rover saw them to the carriage, while Anderson Rover waved them a serious adieu from his bedroom window. Poor Randolph Rover was as feverish as ever, and knew nothing of their coming or their going. All of the boys were half afraid they would never again see their uncle alive. But youth is strong and hopeful, and by the time they had entered the cars, the rail cars, and made themselves comfortable, the scenes around them engrossed their attention, and the past was forgotten for the time being. The train was an express and flew along at the rate of 60 miles an hour. Wow. We'll be in Chicago by this time tomorrow, said Dick. It's quick travelling, isn't it? Because they're in upstate New York, if anyone's wondering. I hope we're fortunate enough to catch Jack Wumble, said Tom. I don't want to lose time in Chicago hunting him up. The car was but half filled, so the boys had several seats all to themselves. They had brought with them a map of Colorado, and they spent much of the day studying this. When it came time for dinner, they entered the dining car. They could not get seats together, and so Tom was compelled to sit opposite to a burly fellow whose appearance did not strike him as altogether favourable. "Bound for Chicago?" asked the man after passing the time of day. "Yes, sir," answered Tom. "Are you bound there?" "I'm going through that city. You belong there, I suppose?" "No, sir, I've never been there before." "Is that so? Going on a pleasure trip or to try your luck? Or perhaps you're on business?" "Be careful what you say, Tom." "Yes, I am on business." "An ill-favoured look, indeed. Yes, I do feel that it is an ill-favoured look that this man has." "You're rather young to be out on business, it strikes me," went on the burly stranger, after a pause. "Oh, I've been around a little before," said Tom coolly. "Yes, you look like a lad who's seen something of the world. Well, I've seen something of the world myself." "Are you a Western man?" asked Tom, who thought it would not hurt to do a little questioning on his own account. "Yes, I was born and brought up in Colorado." The reply interested Tom. He's now got to be very careful not to give anything away. But you have travelled, you say?" "Yes, I've been to San Francisco and to New York and up in the mining districts of the Northwest Territory and in the mines of Mexico. I've been what they call a rolling stone." And the burly man laughed lightly, but the laugh was not a pleasant one. "Then you ought to know a good deal about mining," Tom ventured. "I'm interested in the mines of Colorado. In what part of the state were you located?" "Tom, no." Well, I lived in Ouray sometime. I don't know if that's how you say it. Ouray? 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 I don't know. I'm saying Ouray. And also in Silverton, but I went here, there and everywhere, prospecting and buying up old claims cheap. I hope you struck it rich. Oh, I'm fairly well fixed, was the careless answer. So you're interested in our mines, eh? Got a claim? No, sir, but I'm going out there to look up a claim, if I can. Tom! I'm trying to find it. Where is it? Tom, don't be an idiot. You don't know the guy. Why are you telling him? He's probably mates with Arnold Baxter. No, sir, but I'm going out there to look up a claim if I can. Take my advice and leave mining alone unless you have had experience. The chance for a tenderfoot, as we call them, getting along has gone by. In other words, when it was in the heyday, you might be able to make it, but otherwise not. I shan't waste much time looking around. And don't waste your money either. 9 mines out of 10 that are offered for sale are not worth buying at any price. I've been all through the myth and I know. I suppose you know a great many of the old-time miners? Asked Tom after another pause. Oh yes, loads of 'em. Cure Frank, Bill Peters, Denver Phil and all the rest. Oh look. Our egg timer has finished. There you go. And Black Rabbit goes away. Did you ever meet a man by the name of Jack Wumble? Why couldn't you have started with some other name or two first, Tom? The burly man started and spilled a little of the coffee he was holding to drink. Why, confound the rocking of the train, he answered. Time for the selector of haphazard. Erin has pages to spend, and she's spending them. This is why I didn't put my cushion back up. So what are we going to get this time? The selector of haphazard has chosen crown sequin. I shall just get it. Move some things here and get it from down here. Crown sequin. There it is. Found it. Crown sequin. What do you mean repeat, please? What are you talking about? This is the one that you just won. Are you trying to cancel it? Trying to get a bingo. Oh my goodness. Right, let's start this again. Trying to get a bingo square. Right, where do we get up to? Allow. So is this, do you think this guy is Wumble, or is this somebody else who knows Wumble by reputation and is a little bit concerned about it? Or knows that Wumble knows about something that somebody else is looking for? I don't know. We'll find out soon, won't we? What? Confound the rocking of the train, he answered. Why, yes, I met Wumble once or twice, but never had any business with him. Are you going to buy a mine from him? No, I'm going to try to get him to help locate one that's missing, answered Tom before he'd thought twice. You better all have your brick walls handy for smashing your head up against, 'cause Tom is being a real idiot. Indeed, well, I've heard Jack is a good man at locating paying claims. Do you know him personally? I do not, said Tom. A gleam of satisfaction lit up the burly man's face, but Tom did not notice it. There's something else going on here. Wumble used to hang out in Denver. Going to meet him there, I suppose. No, I'm going to meet him in Chicago if I can. I see. So the talk ran on until the meal was finished. Then the burly man bowed pleasantly, and the two separated. When Tom rejoined his brothers, Sam asked him about the man. I'm sure I've seen him before, he said, but where is more than I can say. I think I've seen him too, said Dick, and I must say I don't much like his looks. He's probably an associate of, Arnold Baxter. When Tom told of the conversation that had been held, Dick shook his head seriously. I wouldn't talk so much, Tom, he remarked. It won't do any good, and it may do harm, you know. I'll be more careful hereafter, Dick. I am sorry myself that I had so much to say, returned Tom. Dick should have been the one. Dick's the oldest. Dick should have been the one who went and sat with the stranger, and then the other two should have sat together. Oh dear. Chapter 18, The Rover Boys in Chicago. We haven't got very far west yet, have we? Not really. The Rover Boys in Chicago. Chicago! Change cars for St. Louis and the West. The long express had rolled into the great depot, and the porters were busy brushing up the passengers in the parlour cars and gathering together their baggage and, incidentally, the tips which were forthcoming. The Rover Boys were soon out on the platform and making for the street. Cab, sir? Coupe? Morning papers, all the news. Have a paper, boss. The crowd of newsboys and hackmen made Dick smile. It's a good deal like New York, isn't it? He observed. Yes, indeed, replied Sam. Where shall we go? To the Western Palace? We might as well. The sooner we find this Jack Wumble, the better. At that moment, the burly man who'd talked to Tom in the dining car brushed up to them. Good morning, my young friend, he said to Tom. Can I be of any assistance to you? Yeah, the Windy City, Chicago. It's because it's right on the lake. Oh, dear. This is reminding me of the Hardy Boys one that we had. The Hardy Boys and the Cabin, I think it was, which was also about going out west to a mine, looking for a mining claim. I don't know as you can, replied Tom coldly. I guess we can find our way round. Glad to help you if I can, went on the man. We want to get to the Western Palace, put in Sam before his brothers could stop. Him. Everybody should have their mouths taped shut except for Dick at this point in the story. These younger brothers are really not quite smart enough, are they? That's quite a distance from here, the man hesitated a moment. I was going up there myself. If you don't mind riding on a streetcar, I'll show you the way. I don't trust this guy, do you? A streetcar's good enough for us, returned Sam. These boys are being really silly. Very, very silly. Loose lips sink ships. Loose lips sink ships, indeed. That's a Second World War phrase about not blabbing to just anybody, minding your tongue so that the enemy, who may have spies everywhere, is not going to hear what's going on. Oh, dear. A streetcar is good enough for us, returned Sam. He was anxious to see more of the stranger, for he wished, if possible, to recollect where he had seen the fellow before. Okay. A passing car was hailed, and they all got on board, each carrying a valise, for the Rover Boys had decided that trunks would be too cumbersome for the trip. So this is just like a small-sized bag. There you go, and we have finished this one. So say goodbye to Sequin Crown, or Crown Sequin, and we'll carry on. Had decided that trunks would be too cumbersome for the trip. They sat close together, and during the ride the stranger endeavoured to make himself as agreeable as possible. "My name is Henry Bradner," he said, introducing himself. "Out in the mines they used to call me Lucky Harry, and a good many of my friends call me that still. May I ask your names?" "My name's Sam Rover," said the boy. "This is my brother Dick, and this is my brother Tom." There were handshakings all around. "Glad to know you," said Bradner. "I hope you find Jack Wumble and that he locates your mine for you." "I've been thinking that I've seen you before," said Sam bluntly. "But for the life of me I can't place you." "Perhaps we've met somewhere in the East. New York, for instance. Have any of you been to Chicago before?" "No." They won't know if he puts them crook as to where they're meant to be. "It's a great city, and there are many sights worth seeing. If you wished, I wouldn't mind showing you round a bit this afternoon or tomorrow." "Thanks, but we won't have time," said Dick shortly. This off-handed invitation made him more suspicious than ever. The talking continued until at last Henry Bradner stopped the car. "Here we are," he said. "The Palace of the West is 1 block down yonder side street." "The Palace of the West?" repeated Tom. "I thought it was called the Western Palace." "And he said he was going there, so why is he telling them where it is?" "Well, it's all the same," laughed the man, but it was not the same by any means. While the Western Palace was a first-class hotel in every respect, the Palace of the West was a weak imitation run by a man who had once been a notorious San Francisco blackleg. The hotel was soon reached, and Bradner led the way into the office, which was filled with rather rough-looking sports, all smoking and talking loudly. "I know the clerk," said Bradner. "I'll ask him about your friend." And before Dick could stop him, he had pushed his way to the desk and was talking in a low tone to the clerk. "You need to be getting over there and finding out what he's saying, boys." Dick tried to catch what was said, but was unable to do so. "You're in luck," said Bradner, on coming back. "The clerk says Jack Wumble's gone off for the day, but he would be back by tonight, sure." "I'm glad of that," said Tom, and he and his brothers felt much relieved. "The clerk cautioned me to keep quiet about Wumble," went on Bradner confidentially. "It seems Wumble and another man had a row over a game of cards, and Wumble wants the other man to clear out before he shows up again. The other man is booked for Denver on the afternoon train." As the statement about cards fitted in with what Mr. Rover had said concerning Jack Wumble, the boys swallowed it without hesitation. And they were inclined to believe that Henry Bradner was all right after all. "Will you register here?" went on the man. "No, I don't like the looks of the place," answered Dick promptly. "We're not the drinking kind," he added. The burly man looked dark and disappointed. "It's a good hotel once you get used to it," he said. But Dick shook his head. "Loose lips sink ships, and make for terrible flute playing," says Al Commutation. "Hi, Al, great to have you here." And Gorik is now affirming everybody. Goodie says Aranel is a glittering fluffy kitten and that our commutation is a multicoloured idiot. Do you need my brick wall? Got enough idiots in this story. Let's carry on. But Dick shook his head and said he would go elsewhere, and motioning to Tom and Sam, he led the way to the sidewalk once more. Henry Bradner followed them. "If I see Wumble, shall I get him to wait for you?" he said. "If you wish, we'll be around tonight and also tomorrow morning to see him." "All right." The boys walked off and around the corner into the street where the cars were running. That's the street cars. "I don't like him at all," exclaimed Dick. "I believe he is tipped to some game." "Oh, you may be too suspicious," declared Sam. "What game can he be up to? He was kind enough to help us hunt up this Jack Wumble." "I don't care. His manner doesn't suit me at all. He's a sneak if ever there was one." The boys walked on for a distance of several blocks and then, coming to a nice-looking restaurant, went in for dinner. While they were eating, Dick happened to glance out of the window of the place and gave a low cry. "What is it, Dick?" asked Tom. "I thought as much. That man is watching us." Dun, dun, dun. Sam and Tom gave a look, but by this time Henry Bradner had disappeared from view. "You're sure that you saw him, Dick?" asked Sam. "I am positive. Boys, do you know what I think? I think he's a sharper, and he imagines he has 3 green country boys with money to deal with." Well, yeah, they've kind of given that away, haven't they? Every time a coconut, indeed. "Well, if he thinks that, he's much mistaken," was Tom's comment. "Tom, the person who went and told him the whole plan of what they're doing." Time for the Gleaner of Shilly Shally. And this one is another one from Aranel. Thank you, Aranel. And what are we going to get this time? Hearts. Okay. Hearts is the winner. Hearts. Yes. Hearts. This hearts, not the other hearts. Because the other hearts are in my Christmas range of Christmas bits and pieces. No, those aren't hearts, those are stars. Anyway, let's carry on. In the first place, we're not so very green, and in the second, our cash account is rather limited. We spoke about a mine, and he may imagine that we carry several thousands of dollars with us. If he's a sharper, why did he try to find Wumble for us? Asked Sam. But who says he did? He told the receptionist something, not that. Lost bingo again, but cute floating hearts. Goriki is stirring. No, I'm not saying it. If he's a sharper, why did he try to find Wumble for us? Asked Sam. This was a poser, and Dick did not pretend to answer it. In other words, it was a question he couldn't figure out the answer to. The dinner finished, they walked forth once more and down into the heart of the city. They soon found what looked to be a fairly good hotel and engaged a large room with 2 beds for the night. "Now we can take a look around," said Tom. The best part of the afternoon was spent in sightseeing, and the boys visited Lincoln Park, Jackson Park, the museum, menagerie, Masonic Temple, and numerous other points of interest. And I'm going to guess that all of those are still in Chicago? I don't know. I've never been to Chicago. They were returning to the hotel at which they had registered for the night when suddenly Tom caught his brothers by the arm. "Well, I never," he gasped. "What do you think of that?" They saw he was gazing across the way and, looking in the direction, saw an elegant hotel, over the broad doorway of which was stretched the sign, "Western Palace, George Lavelle, Proprietor, established 1871. "By jinks, that Bradner deceived us," gasped Dick. "This must be the hotel father mentioned." "But what about Jack Wumble?" began Sam. "He was registered at the other place." "Did you see the register?" asked Dick. Oh, let's turn the egg timer on, by the way. Chicago isn't my town, so I don't know. Yeah, same. "Did you see the register?" demanded Dick. "No, but—" "We'll soon learn the truth," went on the elder Rover. "Come on," and he made his way through the mass of moving wagons and trucks to the opposite side of the thoroughfare. All entered the broad hallway together. The floor was of marble, and big mirrors lined every wall. Certainly the place was in sharp contrast to that known as the Palace of the West. Walking up to the office counter, Dick inspected the register. On the 3rd page from the last written upon, he found the entry, "Jack Wumble, Denver, room 144. "There, what do you think of that?" he demanded, as he showed his brothers the entry. Now, You can't see the registrations of anyone else in a hotel now for security purposes. But in the old days, like when I was a kid, you could actually. There, what do you think of that? He demanded as he showed his brothers the entry. Both were dumbfounded, and for the moment knew not what to say. Dick turned to one of the clerks. "Is Mr. Jack Wumble in?" he asked. The clerk looked at the row of keys behind him. "No, sir, he's out." "Have you any idea when he'll be back?" "I have not. Perhaps he's back already and over in the smoking room." "I don't know him personally, but I'm very anxious to see him." "I'll have a boy look for him," returned the clerk, and called up a bellboy who took Dick's card and went off with it to the smoking room and the dining hall, calling softly as he passed one man and another, "Number 144, number 144. Back in the days when kids had business cards, apparently. Do you have a business card? I've got one somewhere, but it's nothing to do with the business that we run anymore. And I haven't got one for what I do, which is streaming, and I apparently should have one. Presently the bellboy came back, followed by a tall, thin, and pleasant-faced man of 60, wearing a light checked suit and a broad-brimmed slouch hat. "This is the gentleman, sir," he said to Dick. "Are you Mr. Jack Wumble?" asked Dick, curiously. "That's my handle, lad," was the answer in a broad, musical voice. "And I see your card reads Richard Rover. Any relation to Andy Rover, as used to be a mining expert?" "I am his son." "Well, well, his son, eh? Glad to know you, downright glad." And Jack Wumble nearly wrung Dick's hand off. Then Tom and Dick were introduced, and more hand-shaking. Then Tom and Dick were introduced. No, Tom and Sam are the Rover Boys detectives. Kind of-ish, not as much as the Hardy Boys. There's something that goes wrong and they've got to figure it out, but not quite full-on detectives like the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew. So Dick has just introduced himself, and then Tom and Sam, even though it says Dick, that says here, another error, were introduced, and more handshaking followed, and the boys felt that they had found a true friend beyond a doubt. Oh my goodness, where's it going to go next? I'm going to have some more coffee. I don't know what you're going to do. Adventure Boys, definitely. More the adventurer type. Chapter 19, The Burly Stranger's Little Game. This would be that other guy they were with. Oh, cookies. Yum. Aaron now has some gorgeous cookie emotes, and this cookie is having a sip. Yum. The Burly Stranger's Little Game. "I'm more than glad to have met you as we did," said Dick a little later after Jack Wumble had asked the boys about their father. "I think it has saved us from getting into a lot of trouble." And he related the particulars of the meeting with Henry Bradner and what the stranger had said and done concerning Wumble. "The snake," said the old miner passionately. "He's as sharp true as you were born. Why, I never put up at the Palace of the West in my life." "Wish I knew what his game was," went on Dick. "You will know, Dick, if I can get my hands on him. Do you reckon as how he's over to that other hotel now?" "More than likely." "Unless he shadowed us here," burst out Tom. "But if he did that, he must know his game's up, and you can be sure he'll keep out of sight." The matter was talked over, and it was decided that Jack Wumble and the boys should go to the other hotel without delay. On the way, Dick told the old miner, "Miner! Word! Miner!" On the way, Dick told the old miner what had brought them to the West. Jack Wumble took a deep interest in all mining schemes and listened closely to all the youth had to say. "Yes, I remember about the Eclipse mine," he said, "and I remember this Arnold Baxter too. He was a bad one, and if I and some others had our say, he would have dangled from a tree for his stealings, for you see, we didn't have no jails in those days, and stealing was a capital crime." It will help it will you help us to locate. I think the word it is not meant to be there. Let's just turn this off. And we'll take off the hearts. Let's also highlight that word so I can tell them that they've got it wrong. Will you help us to locate the mine before Arnold Baxter or his Confederates can get on the ground? We will pay you for your trouble. I think that guy, Bradner, whatever his name is probably mates with Baxter. Certainly I'll do what I can, but I don't want any of Anderson Rover's pile, not me. Why, your father nursed me through the worst case of fever a miner ever had. And I ain't forgetting it, lads. So he doesn't want to be paid for it, he does want to help. I'll stick to you to the end. And the old miner put out his hand and gave another squeeze that made Dick wince. He grasped his hand pretty hard. The Palace of the West reached. Wumble pushed his way into the smoke-laden office and to the desk. Say, is there a man named Jack Wumble stopping here? He demanded. Jack Wumble, repeated the clerk slowly. That's what I said. There is a Jack Wimple stopping here, but he's out, gone to St. Louis. Jack Wimple, he's not the man. And the old miner fell back and repeated what had been said to the three boys. Perhaps Bradner made a mistake, suggested Tom, but I don't believe it. I think Bradner told the guy to just nod his head and pretend. He tried to make us believe this hotel and the Western Palace were one and the same, put in Sam. He's sharp, I'll tell you, declared Jack Wumble. Just wait till I get on his trail. I'll make him tell us the truth. More than likely he wanted to clean you boys out. They waited around for the best part of an hour, but Henry Bradner failed to return, and at last they gave up looking for him, and the boys went back to where they had hired a room for the night, promising to rejoin Jack Wumble early in the morning, when the whole party would take a train for Denver, where Wumble wished to transact a little business before starting out for Larkspur Creek. The boys had not slept very well on the train, so they were thoroughly tired out. They were on the point of retiring when a bellboy came up stating that their friend wished to see Dick for a few minutes. Wumble must have forgotten something, said Dick. I'll see what it is, and he took the elevator to the ground floor. To his surprise, it was not Wumble who wished to see him, but Henry Bradner. What, you? Cried the youth. I thought you'd skipped out. Skipped out? Queried the burly man in pretended surprise. Why should I skip out? Don't you know that we found you out? Found me out? You're talking in riddles, young man. And the stranger drew himself up proudly. We have found Mr. Jack Wumble, and he tells us that he never stopped at the Palace of the West in his life. Mr. Jack Wimple, you mean? Why, he's certainly at the hotel, or he was. We were looking for Mr. Wumble, and you know it. I care nothing for your Mr. Wimple, and besides, you told us that the Western Palace and the Palace of the West were one and the same. That was a deliberate falsehood. Bradner turned pale and looked as if he wished to catch Dick by the throat. Have a care, young man, he hissed. I'm not a man to be trifled with. I tried to do you a good turn, but I see I have put my foot into it. Henceforth you can take care of yourself. What good turn was that? So speaking, Henry Bradner turned on his heel and strode off, a look of baffled rage in his eyes. Instantly Dick turned to a bellboy. Run up to room 233 and tell Tom Rover to come down at once and follow his brother. He said hurriedly, I can't go up. I want to watch that man, for he's a crook. The boy, the bellboy, seemed to understand and flew for the stairs in the elevator being out of sight. Dick ran to the door to behold Bradner standing on the sidewalk as if undecided which way to pursue his course, but presently he walked slowly up the street. I think he's baiting our young man. Dick followed him and had gone less than half a block when Tom joined him, all out of breath with running. What is it, Dick? It was Bradner who came to smooth matters over. I'm following him to see if I can't get on to his game. Oh, what nerve! I should think he would have been afraid to come near us. They're not a threat to him. He's a bold one, Tom, and we must look out that we don't get bit by him. Henry Bradner covered half a dozen blocks of the street upon which the hotel was located, and then turned into a narrow thoroughfare running toward the Chicago River. Here were a number of low drinking places, and in front of one of these he stopped. Instead of entering the resort by the main door, he went in through a side hallway, which led to a rear room. "Perhaps he's stopping here," suggested Tom as the two lads came to a halt. "Well, if that is so, we'd better remember the place," answered Dick. There was an alleyway alongside of the house. And looking into this, the boys saw a light shining out of several windows near the rear of the resort. "Put away your thesaurus, please, author." "Let us take a peep into the windows," suggested Dick, and led the way. To let out some of the tobacco smoke, the windows were pulled down partly from the top. The bottom sashes were covered with half curtains of imitation lace, but so flimsy that the boys saw through them without difficulty. Bradner had just entered this rear room and was gazing around inquiringly. Now he stalked over to a table near one of the windows and dropped heavily into a chair. "I'm afraid the jig is up," he said, addressing somebody on the opposite side of the table. "Can we guess who?" "What has happened?" asked the other person, and now the two Rover boys were amazed to learn that the party was Dan Baxter. That's the guy who was at school with them, the bad kid. The bully had changed his dress and also the style of wearing his hair, and was sporting a pair of nose glasses, pince-nez, pinch nose glasses, the ones that you clip on your nose. They don't have the bars at the side to hold them on. "They've met the real Jack Wumble and found out I was fooling them about the hotel." "That's too bad," cried Dan Baxter. "You must have made a bad break of it, Bradner." "I did my best, but I couldn't keep them from looking around, although I offered to conduct them. You can bet if I'd had them under my care, they wouldn't have got near the Western Palace, nor Jack Wumble either." "Did you have a man ready to play the part of Wumble?" questioned Dan Baxter, after the burly one had ordered drinks for the two. "Yes, I had Bill Noxton all cocked and primed, like a gun, so it's all ready to fire. But now our cake is dough, and after all the trouble I've taken for your father, too," and Henry Bradner uttered a snort of disgust. "Did you warn this Noxton?" "Oh, yes, and I put a flea into the ear of the hotel clerk, too. But the thing is, what do you suppose your father will want done next?" "Don't ask me," answered Dan Baxter recklessly. He don't half trust me any more. He says I'm only good to sponge on him." And the former bully of Putnam High gave a bitter laugh. "Well, I haven't followed these Rovers all the way from Valleybrook Farm to here for nothing," went on Henry Bradner. "Your father wanted him watched, and I've watched him ever since they came home from that boarding academy. It was a big job, too." Some people like cookie dough. "Our cake is dough." Yeah. "Didn't they suspect you?" "One of them said he thought he'd seen me before," and Bradner laughed. "It was at the Valleybrook church. I followed them to the church just to keep my word to your father." "And you are certain Mr. Rover isn't coming west?" "No, he's laid up with a game leg and won't move for a month. I got that straight from the hired man." There was a pause. "What do you reckon I had best do next?" "Telegraph to my father at Denver," said Dan Baxter. "You know his assumed name, and let him advise you." His assumed name for the telegram. "Let him advise you. I suppose the boys in that Wumble will go straight through to the mining district now." "More than likely." "Then father and Roebuck will have to stop them out there, although how it's to be done I don't know." At this juncture, a waiter came forward and closed down the window, and the balance of the conversation was lost to the two Rover boys. Time to clear out, then. Chapter 20. How's it going to go? And we've got just enough time for one chapter. Just a little too late. Who's too late? The boys or the Baxters? We'll find out. Probably the boys. "What do you think of that?" whispered Dick as he led the way back to the sidewalk. "It was all as plain as day," replied his brother. Ariel has redeemed another one. Time for the randomizer of choices. And what are we going to get this time? Arinelle is determined to get the bingo card this time. What are we going to get? Mouse Blues. Okay, I shall find Mouse Blues. Mouse Blues. This one. Here's Mouse Blues. Most of the ones I've got at the moment are actually from the Disney Dreamlight Valley bunch of the headbands I have a tendency to use when I'm doing the Disney Dreamlight Valley streams. There you go, and we shall start this one. Oh my goodness. "What do you think of that?" whispered Dick as he led the way back to the sidewalk. "It's all as plain as day," replied his brother. "This Bradner was set to watch the house immediately after the robbery occurred. More than likely he was around at the time of the robbery. Do you suppose he's the man who helped Arnold Baxter to escape from prison on that forged pardon?" Creation. It may be so. Creation? Is creation a statement of Eureka or something like that? I don't know. I've never heard of it before. "It may be so," said Tom. "I'll tell you one thing. We ought to have them both arrested at once." "On what basis?" They actually really haven't done any major law breaking. You can't just arrest somebody because you want them arrested. Otherwise, they'd do that to you. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my socks off. It's a little bit warm now. Probably because I'm getting upset with everybody in the story. "I don't know about that," mused the elder Rover. "If we do that, then how are we to find out where Arnold Baxter is, or this fellow they called Roebuck? But they may slip through our fingers if we don't have them locked up." The two brothers talked the matter over, and then decided, late as it was, to call upon Jack Wumble for advice. That's probably not a bad idea. "You can go for him," said Dick. "I'll continue to watch this place. If they leave, I'll throw bits of paper on the sidewalk and you can follow the trail just as if we were playing a game of hare and hounds. Or having a paper chase. It's also called over in England." Tom made off at top speed, carefully noting the street and number so that he would not miss his way when returning. Left to himself, Dick went into the alleyway again and looked through the window as before. Dan Baxter and Bradner were still conversing, but the youth could not hear what was said. Presently the pair at the table arose, settled for their drinks, and came out of the place. They walked up the street and around a corner, and Dick followed, scattering bits of an old letter as he went along. When the letter was used up, he tore to bits some handbills which he found on the street. 8 squares were covered before Dan Baxter and Bradner reached a dingy-looking hotel which went by the name of Lakeman's Rest. It was set in the middle of the block, with brick houses on either side of it. House. I do hope you guys are hydrating every time we have a keyword. They entered the narrow hallway, and by the light above the door, Dick saw them ascend the stairs to the second floor. There now seemed nothing to do but await Tom's return, and the youth retired to the opposite side of the street. It was late, after midnight in fact, and the street was practically deserted. Half an hour went by, and Dick felt as if his brother would never return when he heard swift footsteps behind him. Uh-oh. "So, this is your game, eh?" cried the voice of Bradner. And of a sudden, a club descended upon Dick's head, and he went down as if shot. The man had looked out of the hotel window and spotted Dick, and had gone out by a back way and around the square to make certain of his victim. "That was a good crack," came from Dan Baxter. "Serves him right for following you." Bradner was about to bend over his victim to ascertain how badly Dick was hurt when the footsteps of 2 men approaching made him draw back. "Come, we don't want to get caught," whispered Dan Baxter nervously, and then as the footsteps came closer he darted away with Henry Bradner at his heels. They did not stop until a long distance away from the scene of the dastardly attack. Dastardly attack. I feel like we're watching Muttley or something like that. The men who were approaching were a couple of bakers who were employed in a neighbouring bakery. "Was ist das?" cried one of them as he stumbled over Dick's body. "A young man's?" "He is drunk, Carl," said the other. "Let him be, or you may get into trouble." "Maybe he was hurt or sick," said the German baker, bending down. "I was no the cop on this beat, and he knows I was no footpad." Just then Dick gave a shiver and a groan, and both bakers realised that he was suffering in some way. While the German remained by the boy's side, the other ran to the bakery for a lantern and assistance. Soon a small crowd had collected, and Dick was carried into the bakery and made as comfortable as the means permitted. One of the bakers went on a hunt for a policeman, and presently the officer of the law hove into sight. Dick was just coming to his senses, but was too dazed for several minutes to give an account of what had happened. At last he said a man had struck him down with a club. "Were you robbed?" asked the policeman. Dick felt his various pockets. "No, sir." "You were lucky. I think we scared the rascal away," said the German baker. "More than likely. It's a pity you didn't collar him." The policeman turned to Dick. "Shall I call an ambulance?" "I don't think it's necessary, sir. My brother will be along this way soon. I was waiting for him to come when I was struck." "You were out rather late," remarked the officer of the law suspiciously. "I was watching a rascal who tried to make trouble for me." "Then there must be more to this case than what you just told me," said the cop. "There you go. Turn off the egg timer again and take off Mouse Blues." We're doing well there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 sets of headbands. In that case, must be more to this case than what you just told me. There is. In that case, you'd better go to the police headquarters with me. I am willing, but won't you wait until my brother gets here? There was no need to wait, for at that moment Tom appeared on the scene accompanied by Jack Wumble. They both stared at Dick in horror. "Oh, Dick, are you hurt?" cried Tom. "Not very much. Bradner hit me on the head. I'm glad I'm alive." "Not very much. If you get hit on the head hard enough to go unconscious, and then the bakers go to the bakery, and then after the crowd gathers, someone goes for a policeman, then as the policeman is arriving, you start to come back to consciousness, that is going to hurt." Head injury. "Not very much. Bradner hit me on the head. I'm glad I'm alive." "And where is the rascal now?" questioned the old miner. "Ran away." "And Dan Baxter?" queried Tom. "Gone too, I suppose. They must have been together." And then Dick related what had occurred, so far as he knew, since Tom had left him. The officer of the law accompanied all three to the police station. I suppose there's this for the boys, is people do actually believe them. They don't totally disbelieve what they're saying. Hollywood concussions, special rules. Yeah, definitely. This is where it came from, back before the days of Hollywood doing it. Actually, no, probably didn't. It's probably the other way around. Here the boys told their story, and a watch was set for Bradner and Dan Baxter. But nothing came of this, for the pair left Chicago early the next... Of course they did! "We'd better keep close together after this," said Jack Wumble as he was seeing the boys back to their hotel. "I reckon you've got a mighty bad crowd to deal with," and he remained with them for the balance of the night. The express for Denver left at 11 o'clock in the morning, and all of the party of 4 were on hand to catch it. Soon they were whirling over the fields and through the forests towards the mighty Mississippi River. Okay. I don't know American geography to know if that's realistic or not. Sorry, I'm just getting onto my seat better. We'll be finishing at the end of this chapter, by the way. Sorry. When my book refreshes its page. We've only got a couple of pages left. And through the forests towards the mighty Mississippi River. Never been west before, eh? Remarked Jack Wumble. Well, you'll see some grand sights, I can tell you that. No, we've never been west, answered Sam, but we have been to Africa, he said proudly. Gee, shoo, is that so? Well, that's long travelling, certainly, but I reckon I'd rather see my own country first. We went to Africa for a purpose, said Tom, and told of the rescue of his father. The old miner listened with keen appreciation, and at the conclusion clapped Tom on the back. You're true blue, Tom, he cried. You and your brothers will pull through, I feel sure of it. And then he fell to telling about his own life and how he had become acquainted with Anderson Rover, Andy, and his partner Kennedy, and of the various bad things that Arnold Baxter had done in those days. This man seems to be a chip off the old block, he concluded. The trip to Denver was full of interest, and Dick was sorry he did not have a camera along, that he might take snapshots of the scenery. Yet he was impatient to get to his destination and stake out the missing Eclipse mine before Arnold Baxter and his Confederates should have the chance to do so. It was the afternoon of the next day when Denver was reached and a light rain was falling. Jack Wumble wished to be put up at a hotel called the Miner's Rest, a favourite resort with men from the mining districts. He had been negotiating for the sale of one of his mines and thought he could close the deal the next morning. So, Miner's Rest, here you go, even though in this usage it's a proper name. It's named after miners. And then we'll be off for Larkspur Creek without further delay, was what he told Dick. And that was the last page of the chapter. And we're not going to read any more because it's 1 minute after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:01 p.m. The next chapter for next time is chapter 21, and it's called Off for the Mining District. Yay! It's finally happening. We're in the second half of the book, which is where it all happens. Whatever the book is titled, when it's a Stratemeyer Syndicate book, if it involves a different place to where they are, usually that doesn't happen until the second half of the book. It's just the way it is. 2 books for the price of 1, I suppose. Anyway, so thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for all those headband redeems, Arinelle. I really have enjoyed that. That's been lots and lots of fun. Thank you everybody else for being here as well, not just Arinelle. For being here, listening to the stories, getting involved where you can, and all those other things. We'll see you all next time, which is in 3 days' time, because today is in New Zealand is Friday. So my next reading will be on Monday. If you look at my schedule, which there's in that link down in chat at the moment, which you can see on screen here. If you look at my schedule page, it will show you when I'm next going to be live, unless something happens that radically stops me from being able to be live. Thankfully, when I was crook, I was able to still run the ducks, just because, you know, that's when I'm on, even if I wasn't actually on personally at that stage. I just was not up to reading, unfortunately. So hopefully I'll continue getting better. It's just a cold, I think. So we'll see you in 3 days' time at 2 hours before now in your time zone, whatever that is.